Uri Dadush is with us from Washington this morning. He is Director of International Economics at the Carnegie Endowment and previously spent 11 years at the World Bank. Uri, let's start with this. Most everybody agrees that what happens to the EU depends largely on what Germany and France do, but your prescription does not call for a Greek bailout, correct?
Well, my prescription is that it is virtually inevitable that Greece will either default or need a bailout of some kind. But in addition to that, the issue is not just in Greece. The issue is much wider than Greece. It affects Italy, as you know. It affects Spain. It affects Portugal. It affects Ireland. And so over and beyond the Greek bailout, we have to do some rethinking about our approach to overall fiscal and monetary policy in Europe.
Okay, now, fiscal and monetary policy in Europe, as you've explained in an op-ed in the Financial Times last weekend, requires more government spending to stimulate inflation and correct some of the economic imbalances that exist in the EU outside of budget deficits. That's a pretty unconventional view.
Well, the point is that we are in an unconventional situation. We have an economy that is about 30% larger than Germany. These are the countries I've just enumerated that are at severe risk of prolonged depression. When I say prolonged, I don't mean the next year. I mean over the next several years, that they have to undertake the major structural adjustment and austerity measures, to a lesser degree perhaps than Greece, but nevertheless very much in the same direction. And so the issue is what changes here in terms of the approach to overall policy. Now, a little bit can come from the fiscal side because there is some space in Germany and some other countries to do more in that direction. But over time, one part of the solution is to have more expansionary monetary policies.
Uri, let's talk a bit about wages and some of the other, at least shifts, let's say, in spending patterns among the EU countries. You have said that the increase in wages, in particular in Greece and Italy, compared with, say, Germany over the past several years, are one of the things that have created these imbalances. The question I have, though, is can inflation really restore competitiveness in these economies, Greece, Italy, and Spain, over the long term?
Yes. Well, again, we are not calling for, hyperinflation here. We are calling for a somewhat higher rate of inflation. Now, the reason this is important for these countries that are at risk of deflation and depression in the south of Europe is twofold. On the one hand, these countries need some growth in nominal GDP in order to deal with their rising debt burdens. And the other problem is that they have simply, they do not have the institutional frameworks that Germany has, where you can have essentially very, very low growth in wages over a long period of time. You have to give them a little bit more room. So on nominal, on the growth of prices, so that they can adjust their wages in real terms without cutting nominal wages. In some of these countries, it's illegal, like in Portugal, to reduce nominal wages.
Okay, so Uri, I have to ask you this question before we go. Let's say you're correct. Let's say monetary fiscal stimulus comes from Germany and France. Let's say Greece does default and there is a bailout, as you predict. Ultimately, is the situation sustainable? Can the euro really survive? We have about 30 seconds.
No, I think under any circumstance, we are going to see a significantly lower euro. I think we're going to see slower growth in Europe over several years. And I think there is a serious risk that the Eurozone will implode unless there is a sea change in the way fiscal and monetary policies are conducted.
All right, Uri, quite a dire prediction, of course, unless your prescription is taken. That's Uri Dadush of the Carnegie Endowment coming